All right, eighth grade, here's a little background information for the Inn of Lost Time. It's set in feudal Japan. Now, you guys should recall feudalism from social studies with Miss Savage, but if you've forgotten, reminders that feudalism is you have the ideas that you have a set government which then parcels out duties to smaller figures, and there's a strict, rigid structure to this. And Japan's is a little different than what you may be used to in European feudalism. So in European feudalism, the bottom of the scale is the peasants, then the merchants, then the nobles, then the clergy, then the king. And that's the way it's set up. In Japanese feudalism, it's a little different. So at the top, like with the king, we have the emperor. But the emperor in Japan is largely a figurehead in this time period. What does that mean? It means that he doesn't actually have any real power. He represents real power, but he doesn't have the actual real power. But socially, he is the top. He has his own special title that you address him with while you are speaking. So when you are speaking in Japanese, there typically are titles you would address someone with. I, as a teacher, would be addressed by you as Antonetti Sensei. You would be addressing each other differently. So all of you are older than every other student at Mary of Nazareth as eighth graders. So the sixth graders would refer to you as Snocker Senpai, or Lucas Senpai, or Soto Senpai, or Shoal Senpai, or Shei Senpai, or Duda Senpai, because that is the title you would have for an older student. Likewise, you would refer to the younger students as Kohai. So you would refer to them again by last name and then Kohai. So you would, be referring to Delude Kohai or Albero Kohai as just some examples. Now, if you were addressing each other, since you are neither senpai nor kohai to each other, you would use either, there's a couple there. So there would be san, which is typically a general respect, general catch-all title. So Mr. Carr would be Carr-san. He's not your teacher. Likewise, you would refer to each other as, so-and-so san. That is the title we'd use. The emperor would be referred to as domo. That was his official extra title. There's also other ones in between, like, for example, sama is a position of respect. So you would not refer to Mr. Friel as Friel-san. You would refer to him as Friel-sama, because it's a title of respect. Typically one of lordship, but one of respect. The next person on the feudal Japanese pyramid would be the shogun. And a shogun is a warlord. I want you to think like a major general, but he's in command of it. He has the real power in Japan. He bosses around all these daimos. Daimos are more like field generals. They control small areas, which are effectively like their own little kingdoms. Rather, the shoguns control those. Typically have one shogun, and the little daimos around control the different areas and prefectures of Japan. Japan doesn't have states, they have prefectures. Underneath the daimos are the samurai, and these are equivalent to the European knights. They are nobles, they are trained soldiers and killers, they have the best equipment, but they have a strict code that they have to follow. So in European knights, they had to follow the code of chivalry. Japanese samurai had to follow the code of Bushido. How are they similar? How are they different? Well, both are codes of honor and tell you how you should fight, how you should act, that cowardice is a great problem. Their differences are in terms of that. So chivalry also includes a code of how to treat women, how you're supposed to treat peasants, how you're supposed to act to everyone. Samurai don't really have that. Samurai are sort of above the law because they are the law. That said, cowardice is much more frowned upon in the Bushido Code, as a samurai who surrendered or ran away from battle is supposed to commit suicide, called seppuku, if they were to do something so dishonorable, or they would fall and become what is called a ronin. This is important. Ronin is a term I would write down. Write this down. A ronin is a masterless samurai. It is someone who does not serve any daimyo or lord. They work solely for money, which is looked heavily down on in Japanese culture of this time. The next, and in the middle of the structure actually, are the peasants. And, I should throw in there, the daimyos also include the priests. That's where they also would be in terms of their social standing. The peasants, at number 4, are ranked higher than artisans and merchants because they make the food and everyone needs food to live. So peasants have more respect than artisans. Artisans, experts, people who are trained in tools. These would be your blacksmiths, your thatchers, your potters, or coopers. All these professions that society needs, but they don't make food, so they're ranked below the peasants. And then finally, the bottom of Japanese society are the merchants. And this is interesting because they have a lot of money. But the merchants are looked down on because they don't make anything themselves. They buy things from artisans and peasants and they sell them elsewhere. So they are seen as parasites to society in this Japanese view. They're seen as parasites and don't add any value. That said, when a samurai became a ronin and they didn't have a master either because their warlord died and they didn't commit suicide or their warlord fired them, they would have to work for the merchants. So even though they were the lowest person in society, they could be bossing people around because they had this much wealth. This is kind of a long video, so your one on the literary term is going to be separate. But this is some important background information, and I'm telling you, you need to know what a ronin is, and you should have a general idea of the Japanese class structure in this time period. So take care, 8th grade. I will see you in the next video.